Hey, my little ocean kids. Welcome back to our study of the ocean. Let's start by just walking through what we learned yesterday. That's always one of the fun things to do. This was the poster or the one pager that we made. And yesterday we talked about the sunlight zone in the ocean, which, if you remember, that is the very, very tippy top of the ocean. It's where the most sun hits. Let me see if I can try to find it again in a picture for us. It's in that top part of the ocean. And remember what we did yesterday to show what 90% means. We drew circles, and each circle represents 10%. So that means 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100% of all the ocean life is right there. And 90% of it happens to be in the sunlight zone. And the sunlight zone is where you go swimming when you go into the ocean, and it's where most of the animals tend to want to be. And that's kind of because the sunlight zone is where the plants are. The sunlight zone gives enough sunlight that the plants can grow. So then obviously the ocean animals who eat the plants want to be there, but then the predators of the ocean want to come up to that sunlight zone to eat the animals that are the plant eaters. So the whole kind of circle of life happens in the sunlight zone. Then we decided to go into just studying about one habitat that we might see in the sunlight zone, and that was coral reefs. And we talked about how coral reefs are the rainforest of the ocean. So this was all about the sunlight zone, but today we're moving on. So if you are one of my kiddos who's working from the ocean report, you want to turn to our next zone, which is called the Twilight Zone. And remember, we're studying the ocean. There's a million different ways you can study the ocean. Every time you watch a video on the ocean, you're studying it. Reading, you're studying it. You might just want to take this piece of paper and highlight it while we're reading. That's studying. Some of you who love to draw pictures and love to do your fancy writing, you might want to just take notes on a white piece of paper. That's what I'm going to do. Now, yesterday we wrote sunlight zone up here at the top. Today I'm going to try something else. Today I'm going to write Twilight Zone, and I'm going to put it, let me see, make sure you guys can see this, more in the middle, because this is what you could do on a one-pager also. And this could be if you're studying anything you want. You might be studying an animal. You might be studying a place in the world. Anything. And right here in the middle, I'm going to write Twilight Zone. And I'm going to give it an uppercase, just like it's its name. And then around it, I'm going to put our bubble. And I might even put some ocean waves coming in and out of it. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to take notes on interesting things that we discover. Now I have to say I went ahead because I wanted to find some of the animals that we will see in the Twilight Zone. All right, so I'm just reading along with this. You may read along with me. It says the Twilight Zone is below the sunlight zone from about 600 to about 3,300 feet. So that means from the top of the ocean, the surface, down to 600 feet, that's the sunlight zone. Now we're starting at 600 feet and moving down to, it looks like about 3,300 feet. So I'm going to take out some markers and I'm going to write that. I'm going to draw a line to my Twilight Zone and I'm going to write 600 to 3,300 feet. abbreviation for feet, okay? So if you are reading along, you can underline that in the writing. And this is an approximate. When we were doing measurement, we talked about how we say things are about. Scientists give this an approximate. It's about this much, okay? And so we're sort of talking about the middle of the sandwich because the sunlight zone is on top and the midnight zone is on the bottom. We are right in that squishy middle of the ocean right now. Now the next sentence says, as you get further and further away from the ocean's surface, less light is filtered through the water. As a result, the water gets colder and colder. So I just heard of two different important things. I heard less light and I heard colder. So I'm gonna pick a couple more colors and I'm gonna write those two notes again, okay? And you can pause me at any time if you're working on this. So I'm going to write less light and then I'm going to write colder. And that makes sense because if you think back to what we learned when we were talking about energy and the light and heat energy, we learned that the sun is where we get our light and our heat energy from. So all that energy is going into the sunlight zone, the heat energy, the light energy. And as it can only push through so much. So at the top, it pushes through a lot, but then it has to fight through that water. And water, as you know, can be heavy. Think about if you poured water into a bucket and you had to pick it up. Water is heavy, it's got weight. And so that sunlight and that energy has to try and push through the weight, and it makes it harder and harder. So that's why the tippy top of the ocean is going to be the warmest part. And then as you dive down into deeper waters, it's going to get colder and colder. Same goes with this twilight zone. So this is our a cold area, which means if you're an ocean animal that hasn't been given those superpowers, you're going to stay out of the twilight zone, okay? Now let's hear what it says about animals in the next paragraph. Many animals migrate or move between the twilight zone and sunlight zone in search of food, including the sperm whale and swordfish. Other twilight zone animals include crabs and other crustaceans, dragonfish, viperfish, and many worms. So in there, we have heard about some of our other animals. One thing that I did hear it say or read that it said is that it said the animals go back and forth. So they migrate back and forth. So that made me think of humpback whales. Humpback whales migrate, and they migrate in the water for a very, very specific reason. When the waters get too warm in the summertime, where we are, the humpback whales will migrate north up to the North Pole, where that water stays cooler. But then when the winter months roll around and the North Pole gets even colder, those humpback whales pack up and they go back on vacation to the warmer waters. So animals do the same thing sort of in the zones of the ocean. If those top layers of the zone are too warm in the sunlight zone, the animals that can dive down into the twilight zone. So it says that they migrate or move. Migrate is another word for move. I'm going to use migrate. Migrate between sunlight and twilight. And I didn't say animals, but hopefully you know that that's what that means. And then the other thing I wanted to write is they search for food there. search for food. Okay, so I have an example for you. Now it gave us a lot of examples. The one that I am going to talk to you about is one, of course, it's got to be a whale, because you know I feel about whales. They're my favorite. I hope I can turn this so you guys can see the bottom of my paper. It's a little bit better, I guess. So the one that they mentioned was the sperm whale. This is the sperm whale right here. And a sperm whale usually actually lives in the Atlantic Ocean. We are on the edge of the Pacific Ocean, as you know, but sperm whales live in the Atlantic usually, and they have teeth. So as we'll learn next week, whales, some have teeth, some have something else called baleen. We're going to talk about that. It's fascinating. But the interesting thing about the sperm whale is, of course, the sperm whale can eat fish. He has the ability to chew with his mouth because he has teeth. So he can eat fish, no problem, in the sunlight zone. He could even eat fish, no problem, in the twilight zone. But what he loves to eat more than anything is the giant squid. Well, problem. The giant squid lives in the twilight zone. I'm trying to find a picture of it for you guys. But I have not been able to find a really good one. And so when our sperm whale is deciding it wants a really, really, really good dinner, it's going to travel down to the twilight zone. So that's what it means. It doesn't happen all the time, but just like sometimes as grown-ups or even as kids, sometimes we want a nice dinner, maybe on our birthday or on a fancy holiday. And so we decide to eat something that's a little bit bigger. Oh, here's one. Or a little bit nicer. Same thing goes with the sperm whale. He will go after, or she, I'm sorry, a giant squid. And they, in nature terms, are a very good match for each other. That means that even though the sperm whale is this giant whale with teeth, it doesn't automatically catch the squid and eat it. Giant squids are super powerful and have been given their own different special powers from Mother Nature to fight against the sperm whale. So that happens to be one kind of animal that goes back and forth. So if you're really a fan of the Twilight Zone and you want to study an animal that goes back and forth and lives there, the sperm whale and the giant squid are really good ones. Okay. Now the other one they mentioned was a swordfish. And it says, the sharp bill of the swordfish makes a useful weapon when attacking a fast-moving, dense ball of fish. Interesting. So I'll show you a picture of the swordfish too. And I've actually never studied swordfish. You can see why it's called the swordfish with that big sword sticking out of its head. So a swordfish. There you go. So the Twilight Zone is probably the least interesting of the zones. And I feel bad saying that because I love the ocean. You guys know I love the ocean. But the Twilight Zone is sort of like that, sort of like the place where all the animals kind of go in and out of, but most of them don't live there. Most of them just travel through. And they don't stay there for long because the action is all at the sunlight zone. So you've got to think about that. Remember, even yesterday we read that coral reefs are the rainforest of the ocean. Well, that means all the action is going to be up high. So I'm assuming that, you know, I would think the animals, when they want to break or when they are looking for something specific, like when they're looking for a giant squid, they would travel down there. So I don't know. And I went into the classroom again today and I was looking through, I have bins and bins of ocean books. And that's actually one of my most favorite things to do is just get out different ocean books and find a quiet space outside or inside and just turn the pages and look at the different animals. And as you do that, a lot of times you're just gonna naturally find one that you're interested in and that you wanna learn about. And that's the best part about researching and making these reports. So now what you can do is you can start decorating this. You could draw the different types of animals that it said live there. You can always go onto YouTube and search Twilight Zone animals for kids from National Geographic, and they will pull some up for you that you could learn about. And that way you could add to your one pager, okay? So this was just another fun way. Remember on our Sunlight Zone one pager, I put our title at the top, but on our Twilight Zone one pager, I put it in the middle. So one pagers are really fun. You're gonna do a lot of them in second grade. That's why I'm getting you ready right now. And this way, when you walk into your second grade classroom next year, you'll say, oh, I know all about one pagers. I even have some of my own ideas. So you'll love it. Meet me back tomorrow for the Midnight Zone. That's a really creepy and really strange place on Earth, let me tell you. I love you and I miss you and I wish we were studying this together, but I'll see you soon on YouTube. Love you. There's no place like home.